Welcome. This is MoneyHeart, where we explore the emotional side of money. I'm Camille Diaz, and today we're discussing unlocking the golden handcuffs. My guest is Jessica Medina. She's a former lawyer turned accredited financial counselor. She helps attorneys figure out the money so they can pursue their true passions, no matter the salary. Jessica, welcome to MoneyHeart.
Thank you so much for having me, Camille. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited that you're here, and I'm excited about this topic because a lot of times we think if we can just make enough money, everything will be okay. All of our problems will be solved as soon as we hit that six-figure mark or seven-figure mark, whatever it is we think we need to hit. One of the first things you told me when we started talking about this episode is that being a highly educated professional and making over $100,000 a year does not protect you from money issues. So what's up with that? We're lying to ourselves. What's going on?
Well, so I have my fancy fascinator with me today as an indication that being fancy with your job or with your money doesn't actually protect you from all the fancy money problems, right? Just because, like you said, just because you may have a professional degree, you may be, highly paid as per the average salary of a typical American household, that doesn't mean that you are managing your money well or asking for help in that department. And I think that, those especially people who have gone to school for many years, maybe have a degree or two under their belt, there's an even stronger impulse to want to figure it out on your own because you're a smart person. You should be able to do this. And to be fair, you probably can. It probably isn't outside of your capability. The question is whether you actually have the motivation and the bandwidth to be able to take on teaching yourself something that maybe you didn't get earlier in life. And I think, accepting that and also accepting help when maybe you don't have extra hours in the day to become a personal finance expert is a really important step to making sure that you are managing your money better when you may not have, grown up with that kind of a foundation and now find yourself with money to manage.
I love that. And especially the concept of asking for help. When you're a highly educated professional and you're in one of those fields where people are regularly looking to you for help and they expect you to be the expert and they expect you to know all the information, that's probably a lot of pressure to just go and say, okay, I've got a topic that I don't really know much about. I don't have information on this. That seems super rough. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. Was it hard when you because you coach on this? So do your clients, how do they even get to you? How do they even feel comfortable to say, Jessica, please help?
It is really hard. And one of the things that I think draws my clients to me in particular is the fact that I have lived their experience, right? So I was a practicing attorney. I practiced in the DC metro area for nearly 15 years before I went full time to become an accredited financial counselor. I worked in big law, which is basically a term of art for most of the major law firms that pay the highest salaries, but also demand the most from their associates. But I also went into the federal government, and so I have a pretty varied practice experience. But I know what it feels like to have no time to do anything other than practice law. And, I think even as attorneys, we are constantly having to, condition ourselves that when someone asks us a legal question, we probably can't answer it because just because you're a lawyer doesn't mean that you're every kind of lawyer, right? There aren't any general practitioners in the law. We all have a specialty area. Even if it is something as general as litigation, that means that you are not a corporate attorney. And maybe you shouldn't be advising on mergers and acquisitions, right? And so in that respect, many of us are trained to say, well, I can't answer this question specifically, either because I have no idea about this practice area, I'm not licensed to practice in the area where you need help, or it's really just outside of my professional ethics to be giving you any advice in an area that, I'm not a specialist in. That being said, we do like to at least opine on what's going on, right? Because lawyers are trained to always have the answer to questions. We don't even ask questions that we don't know the answers to. That is how deeply ingrained the training is, because you never want to be surprised by someone's answer, right? You never want to have the retort. You never want to be able to take that piece of information that you've gotten from them and fold it into the fact pattern that you need it to be. And so it can be a very uncomfortable situation for a lawyer who's trained to be the know-it-all in the room, to sit in a room with someone who knows more than them about a particular subject matter. And if that subject matter is your own finances, that's even more embarrassing, right? Shouldn't you be the master of your own finances? And to have someone sitting across your desk, right? Because you're the big fancy lawyer, you have the big fancy office, they come to see you in your big fancy office, and to not be able to answer their questions about your own money, no, thank you. Nobody wants to be part of that conversation. And so when I have those conversations with my own clients, I get to tell them, I sat in your chair. I sat in your chair and I never asked any questions because I was too embarrassed to do it. And I didn't want the other person sitting across the table from me to think that I didn't know what I was doing or that I was messing something up. And so for many years, I just never asked. And I taught myself. And if you have 8 years to do that, please go ahead and feel free. But you're talking to me because you don't want to take on that lift. And I get it, because you're also efficient and you have other things that you like to spend your time doing. And so, it's always an interesting journey for me, because I have to tell my clients, I never actually got over that. I didn't go to a finance expert and ask any questions. I taught myself all of the things that I needed to know, but I was only able to do that because I was no longer practicing at my firm. And so since I understand the burdens that my clients are under and how becoming a personal finance expert in their spare time is not really an option, they get to use me as a shortcut, and a shortcut that is not going to look down on them or judge them or, think that they are less than because they're not managing their money well.
Right. And I think that is true of any financial true professional. They're never going to look down on you because you don't know something. They're never going to make you feel bad because you came into their office with a question. If your financial professional does that, go find a new financial professional. I would never do that to any of my clients because I am just super proud of them for coming in, asking the questions, and for us starting the process together. But that is the fear. That is totally the fear that you're going to show up, you're going to ask a question, you're going to be like, hey, this is a dumb question. They're going to go, yeah, that's a dumb question. Not the way it is.
It is the fear. And I completely agree with you, Camille. All the financial professionals that are worth, working with treat everyone the way that we do, but many of them don't. They don't have the patience.
Yes.
And then when they're sitting across the table from a highly educated professional, they do come with a bit of their own insecurity, right?
Right.
Is somebody going to think that, they're not an expert if they don't almost look down on them? We don't have to get into all of the emotional aspects of what practicing law can do to you as a human being and how it like twists your mind and the way that you interact with other human beings. But it is a very, it's a very aggressive profession, and it's very antagonistic. Right? So every conversation that a lawyer has with another human being is most likely a fight. There's most likely some sort of besting that needs to go on in that dynamic. And we bring that dynamic everywhere with us. It's very difficult to leave that at the door. So even when you are meeting with someone who is trying to help you, you still take that antagonistic stance. And if you end up sitting across the table from somebody who gets a little triggered by that, and then takes also a competitive and combative and antagonistic stance, that is going to feel like an unhappy situation, right? So you got to find someone like me or Camille.
Yes. So let's talk about this concept that we titled the episode after, golden handcuffs. Kind of explain, what does golden handcuffs even mean for somebody that hasn't heard that term before? And then how did you kind of get stuck in this? It's sort of just a feedback loop, recurring cycle.
Yeah, so golden handcuffs used to be attached to kind of the golden parachute concept, right? Where there is some sort of benefit that goes along with your job that, keeps you there for longer than you would necessarily want to be there. It used to be pensions. Those things barely exist anymore, right?
Yep.
But something that would require you to work at your company for, 10, 20, 30 years before you could, get access to this benefit. You felt tied, right, to the company, you felt handcuffed. Nowadays, golden handcuffs could take the form of, a big house or a fancy car. And a lot of new professionals can get sucked into those more typical golden handcuff situations. But what I work with my clients on specifically are those sneaky golden handcuffs that you might not even be thinking about, but it's everything, all the decisions that you make about your lifestyle that actually keep you in a job that makes you unhappy. And when you start thinking about what would change in your life if you didn't work at a job that made you so unhappy, would your lifestyle expenses actually change in a material way? And so I've done this exercise with a number of my own clients just to kind of show them how much of their spending is a direct reflection of the fact that they work at a job that they don't like, a job that requires them to be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and also a job that sucks the life out of them, right? Where they have to create joy and create happiness somewhere else. And given the fact that they have no time, they usually use money to do
Well,
it.
I'm loving this concept because you're essentially what I'm picturing when you're saying like you have no time, you have nothing fun going on. To me, that is saying you're probably going to spend money on having food and everything else delivered because you don't have any time to go pick it up. You're probably going to just, rather than researching what a less expensive, more reasonable option is, you're going to get the first thing that pops up because you do not need to be making another decision right now. You're like, just that'll work. Great, do it. And then, like you said, finding joy in things. So you're going to want to do more expensive vehicle, home, eating dinner out, vacations, things like that. So we brought up the antagonistic thing before. Does this also play out in like kind of like a one-upsmanship of those people that you're working with or
I
around?
mean, I think of, kind of the concept of, right, keeping up with the Joneses as kind of a separate concept from the golden handcuffs themselves. But I do think that is an important aspect, especially with, highly paid professionals, because they're hanging out with other highly paid professionals. Everyone has different life obligations, but oftentimes it looks like everyone spends money on exactly the same things, regardless of what those other obligations may be. Right, because you can be an associate, starting at your law firm making $200,000 a year. One of you could have $300,000 of student loans, and one of you could have none. And yet you spend your money on similar lifestyle expenses, right, in order to feel like a fancy attorney, right? We only want to be fancy attorneys today. But so in terms of, all of the things that you were mentioning when, it was starting to percolate in your own brain about what could come into golden handcuffs, I usually think of them into 4 separate categories. There's all of the expenses that go along with just the fact that you work where you work. Do you pay for parking? Do you have community expenses? Do you have to pay for dry cleaning? Do you have to live in a major metropolitan area because that's where your firm is located? Those are just expenses that are directly related to the fact that you work where you work. The second
I didn't
category,
even think about the dry cleaning. Like, oh my gosh, you've got to wear a suit to work every day. So of course you're going to have, $100 of dry cleaning regularly. Like, it didn't even occur to me. Okay, sorry. Number 2
wardrobe is a large expense when if you're in client meetings, you're in court. I mean, all of those things require a certain level of dress. The second category is the 24/7 nature of your job, right? So this goes into the convenience spending for having extended childcare, right? Not just 9 to 5 childcare, 9 to 9 childcare. Not being able to cook means that everything has to be immediately available and delivered, right? Getting things from Amazon same day. You can't even wait the 2 days, right? These are the kinds of things that start to add up and are just a reflection of the fact that you don't have time to plan and you don't have time to do anything other than work, So all of these services, just rounding out your life and getting through your day is a cost that you might not have if you didn't have those kinds of pressures. The third category are self-soothing exercises, right? So the money that I used to spend on alcohol and coffee, those were all just to calm my own nervous system down, just given the amount of stress that I was under. And a lot of my clients spend that money on massages. Some of them use travel as self-soothing activities, whatever it is. If it's some expensive hobby that you never actually have time to engage in, but you like to buy all the stuff for, right? Those are self-soothing purchases. And then, there's one more category that basically is, I deserve it. I work really hard. I want to have a fancy purse. I want to have, the new shoes. I want to go to that spa that everybody's been talking about. So, maybe keeping up with the Joneses falls into kind of like, I deserve it. I deserve to have what other people have in their lives. But it really is just about however you manifest, these are the things that I want, and I should be able to get them because I work so hard and I make so much money. Shouldn't I be able to have these nice things? And the real question is, do those nice things bring you any joy? Do you get a chance to use any of those nice things that you spend your money on? Or is there a complete misalignment of what is actually really important to you and where all of this high salary ends up going at the end of the day? I've worked with clients when we actually did this analysis, because I will walk them through it and we will literally do line item checks of how much they're spending in these different categories. And I had a couple they were both professionals. They had 3 children in private school, in the DC metro area, very expensive, not New York, but it tries to be for some reason, very expensive, just living, right? And a third of their large salaries were going to golden handcuffs expenses, which was over $12,000 a month, right? So thinking through, wow, what could I do with those $12,000 if I'm not even happy in my job, right? My job is requiring me to spend this money. What if I could take a $12,000 a month pay cut? Would that make my life better?
Would I be happier if I just didn't need it? Yes.
If I just did this and I was able to come home at a regular hour and cook for my family and, pick up my kids from school, or maybe they didn't have to be in private school because we were in an area that had a better school system. There's all of these levers that you can pull once you start paying attention to what the levers are. And that's one of the things that I help my clients do when we are literally going through an exercise of unlocking the golden handcuffs.
This seems like something that would build up over time. This doesn't feel to me like a thing that's like, day 1, graduate from law school, day 2, start job, day 3, I'm spending all my money on all this extra stuff. It seems like it would kind of just creep in over a few years of adapting to that on-demand 24/7, have to be on, have to be the best, have to be awesome. I'm sure that there are other professionals that go through the same thing. Anybody in a high position corporate job, I would figure doctors would have this a lot because they're also, on call a lot of the time and not able to get away and not in control of their hours in the situation. So this is probably takes some unwinding when somebody finally does make the decision of, okay, can I stop doing this? It's not going to be like an overnight, great, we'll just cut $12,000 out of the budget type of a deal.
Right. We never want to go to extremes right away, right? We never want you to start making coffee at home if you've never made coffee before, right? We're not trying to set you up for failure here. You still have to show up at your job and be able to perform. That being said, I do think it is interesting. Lawyers in particular, certainly the ones that I work with that have a similar career path to me, where they went to law school, they graduated, they went straight into big law. They actually do graduate from law school where they probably been making $0. They go from 0 to 200,000 immediately. And that can be quite a shock to the system if you have no idea how to manage that kind of money coming in. And so for a lot of my clients, it's not a slow build. It's kind of, they come out the gate and they see more money being deposited into their bank account than they've ever seen before. And it doesn't even feel real, right? This amount of money doesn't feel like real money. And so if they haven't had all of it deducted out because they have all of their bills being paid automatically, right? And they never get to see the money, it does look like you're just swimming in it and you can spend whatever you want, whenever you want. And I have a lot of clients who come to me and they've maybe been practicing for just a year. And the first thing out of their mouth is, so you should probably know that I did this and this and this and this and this and this. But I really want to get on a better plan because I don't think that I can maintain that pace. And I'm like, yeah, you probably can't maintain that pace if you ever want to do anything else. If you want to keep doing this for the rest of your life, go hog wild. You can afford it. Of course there's better uses for your money, but we're going to be like working around the edges here. I mean, do you want to have 6 million at retirement or 4 million at retirement? You tell me when we can make decisions. But if you don't want to have to stay at this level, then yeah, we might need to be making some different decisions. But I totally agree with you. There are many lifestyle decisions that they have a compounding effect. It takes you a little while to realize how stressful the job is because they usually go a little bit easy on you in the beginning. And then the real work and the cumulative effect of all of your matters constantly being added to, old ones never go away, right? It's just more and more and more work that digs you into a hole of, and I need more and more to keep myself sane and to keep myself really functioning at the level that I need to be functioning at in order to get all the work done.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. How did you find your way out? Because I know we didn't even address your personal story of, you didn't just go into this career, you went into this career and had kids. And so what did you do there? And what was your sort of deciding factor on, I think I'm going to go a different direction. And then how can other people kind of move on if they want to do something else?
Yeah, I mean, my story, I don't think is very typical for most people going to law school. I started out, imagining that I would end up in the government. I had dreams of like changing the criminal system from the inside out. That's why I went to law school. I was all jazzed about it. And I ended up having twins my second year of law school, and I was a single mom. So there was a fair amount of pressure just to finish law school, let alone start my practice, have a career, do all the things that I had planned out for myself. And I graduated with over $200,000 in student loans. And I'm so old, we didn't have the forgiveness programs that we have now. So I was just staring at a mortgage without the house to back it up, right? This was my life graduating from law school with my babies. And so I didn't really see a path for me to go straight into the government and be able to survive and be able to support my family. But I went to Columbia. Columbia is very adamant about making sure that everyone knows that large law firms are an option and this is how you get into them. And so I did end up, at a large law firm in DC, and I was, in that, top tier of salary. It was a great firm as firms go. It was actually extremely family friendly. They had a daycare on site. Not that that didn't have anything to do with my choice for them, right? But things that I was looking for, knowing that I was going to need, a slightly different firm than what you might typically see. But it's still,
I could see that being a great draw. Totally worthwhile to have your kid. I mean, if you need that, like you said, 9 to 9 childcare, and it's going to be on site, so you don't have to go, it's 8:45 and like speed across town to go get them. That's fantastic.
You just speed downstairs and bring them back to your office. Yes, I did a couple of years like that. I had coloring books in my office. I lucked out. I hit like the lottery winner for great offices. I ended up getting an office that was like 1.5 times the size of what regular associate offices looked like. So I had a little table. I had extra chairs. My kids could sit there while I finished up doing my work. The amount of guilt that I had for having my children at the office with me until 8 o'clock is a completely separate episode that we can talk about later.
Yep.
But that's kind of where I landed, knowing that I was going to need to be commanding as much money as I possibly could in order to handle all of the obligations that I had created for myself. But when I got there and I started making money, it didn't go nearly as far as I thought that it would. I was really surprised that I didn't have like more money at the end of the day. But between, renting an apartment in DC, I had a car, I had a nanny, I had kids, I had more mouths to feed. And I paid through the nose for everything. And I had student loan payments. I mean, there was just a lot all mixed in there together. And I never felt like it went very far. But if you ask me where was it actually going, I could probably tell you like the top 5 things, and then the rest was just kind of a blur of what happens to the rest of the money. Like, I don't know, because I wasn't paying attention. And the reason that I wasn't paying attention in large part was because I didn't really know how to. I had never been taught, kind of how to budget effectively. Money in my home was considered a taboo topic. My parents are both Hispanic. My father's Puerto Rican, my mother's Dominican. We actually have superstitions about talking about money and like leaving money in random places. And so it was kind of ingrained in me. Money is not something that you talk about with other people, which prevented me from being able to ask any question.
Right.
And then I went to law school and I didn't want to feel stupid asking questions about money. Sure. So I just kind of bumbled my way through working at the firm and trying to balance things as well as I could. And it wasn't really until I took the plunge and I did leave after 8 years of practice, I left to go to the federal government. And I took a 50% pay cut. And I learned real quick how to fix my money and to make sure that I hadn't created a hole for myself that I couldn't get out of, because I wanted out of that firm badly. And the money was a really big hang up for me in terms of the timing of my exit. It was very hard for me to wrap my head around how I could possibly afford my life on a government salary if it felt like I could barely afford it on my big law salary. But I did it. So it was obviously possible. The question is, where was my motivation and where was my skill set in being able to manage that when I was at the firm? It was pretty non-existent. Like I said, I was just kind of bumbling my way through. Right. I made a couple of really good decisions, which I think, are what a lot of my clients end up doing, right? If you make some good foundational decisions and you're not, underwater on a mortgage, you don't continuously upgrade your car every year, you get into a student loan repayment strategy that actually works for you and your family. Those can be very confusing and complicated for many people. And that's one of the things that I help my clients think through. But going to the government was painful. And my children will tell you.
So what I'm finding really interesting is you said, you were making $200,000 right out of school.
Oh, no, I wasn't. I'm old.
You weren't. You're old. Okay.
Now. That's what
I'm old too. It's cool.
I think I was making 125.
Okay. So you made 125 right out of school. About how much were you making by the time 8 years had passed? Because I'm guessing you get raises in between. So were you at like,
when I left, I was at between 250 and 300 when you put in bonuses.
Okay. So you were making, let's just go conservative and call it 250 when you left. We won't count your bonuses getting you up to 300. And you took a 50% pay cut to work at the government. So if you were making 250, you went down to 125 and still struggled to figure out, how do I survive at 125? Which for a lot of people, they're just like, what? 125? I would love to make that. So this is really like a different mindset that you get sucked into when you have this level of income and don't have skills on how to do it. I've had so many people come to me that are just struggling to make it. And they're like, but my credit score is really good because I pay the minimum on everything, but I just can't get ahead. And I'm like, you have the skills already. It's so interesting to see how sometimes when you have less, it forces you to get those skills. And when you have a ton of money coming in, you're missing out on some learning opportunities there.
I think that is absolutely true. And it's one of the reasons why I try to explain to my clients, there was no reason for you to learn, right? You had enough buffer with your cash flow to be able to make all kinds of mistakes, right? To be able to be the most inefficient person possible with money and still pay your bills on time, right? You still pay your credit card in full every month. What did you put on your credit card? No idea. But it didn't matter because you paid for it, right? It's a next level of strategizing and thinking really critically that if you don't have to do it, why would you? why would you spend your energy thinking about that if you don't have to? And that, I think, is one of the issues that happens when, like, this is kind of like lotto winners, right? When you have this windfall, and for attorneys, sometimes the windfall is going into big law and having a career that pays you very well. It sucks the life out of you, but it pays you very well. And you are not forced to be strict with yourself. You're not forced to live on a budget. You're not forced to watch your checking account like a hawk. And so you don't develop those skills. And to be honest, it is a disservice in many ways, because once you would like to implement those skills in order to live a different life, you don't have them. You can't just call them up out of nowhere. You now have to learn, and you have to learn in the context of, oh my God, if I had done this 5 years ago, I would be a millionaire. I have never gone back to look at how much money I wasted when I was at the firm, because that's depressing, Camille. And I'm not interested in knowing that anymore.
I'm not asking you to. You don't have to be mad at me. We're not going to do that math. It's cool.
I don't need that number to move forward and feel better about what I'm doing now.
You're doing great now.
Let's just move forward.
Move on. Just move. We're not gonna go back and worry about what we did. We're just gonna start from here and go forward. It's cool. I love that. So what can we do to build our money management skills? Like, kind of what are your quick top tips or things we should know to build up?
So I think for many professionals, right, one of the biggest issues is just a lack of clarity. They really have no idea where their money is going. And it's one of the first things that I do with my clients. It's one of the most painful things that I do with my clients. And I warn them, I tell them, my prep work is pretty legendary. I probably shouldn't say this. I had a client cry while she was filling it out, but it was very cathartic. And of course, it's been one of the most instrumental things that in our work together, but also just for her own life, to be able to actually dig in and see what has been happening with your money up to this point. And it's not to beat yourself over the head. It's not to punish yourself for all of these bad decisions that you think that you've made. It's to give yourself awareness of what was going on and to be able to make an intentional choice of how you want to move forward. Right? Because it's one thing to say, oh, I don't spend more than $100 on clothes a month. I couldn't possibly spend more than $100 on clothes a month. And when they actually go back and they look at the credit card statements, they realize they spent $100 on each item that they bought that month. Right? And that is a very different level of awareness than they've had before. So as much work as it is, that really is the first step, because without that clarity, we're just going to be lying to ourselves about what we really do in our life. And I don't like making spending plans based on imaginary numbers, because there's no way that I can take you from spending $500 a month on clothes to zero, right? I mean, I can, but you're not going to be able to sustain it. And so when we are going through our work together, all of the strategies that I put together for my clients are founded on what their life actually costs, what things are truly important to them, and what things are absolutely non-negotiable. And that's where we want to focus our attention. And the rest of it, we can mess around with. The rest of it, we can maybe leave on the wayside. And that's where we're going to find all of the surplus that they know they should have that, we haven't been using. But you have to have that clarity in order to really be able to dig in. And so that, I think, is for anyone, the most important step is shining that light. Let's get it out into the open, and then let's just move forward from there.
I love that. And don't feel bad about your clients crying. I have clients that cry too, because money is super, super emotional. And once we get into it and we get past those barriers of being weird about talking about it and whatever, then all the truth comes out. And sometimes they cry because they're so frustrated with where it is. And sometimes I have them cry at the last meeting when we finally solved it. And they're like, oh, thank goodness we fixed the thing. You put this in place. I feel good about it. So it happens all the time, because that's just the way money stuff is. So
I should say that to balance, I also just had a client cry during our strategy session where I explained to her all the things that were now going to be possible because we were going to be optimizing what she's doing.
Yes.
And she broke down in tears just with the relief.
Yes, relief all the time.
she wouldn't have to do what she's currently doing for the rest of her life. Yeah. And it has completely opened her up, like as a human, as a lawyer. And so, yes, the prep work is really rough, but it's totally worth it because
totally worth it.
Happy tears on the other end.
Yes. Yeah. When somebody finds out they're actually going to be able to retire, they're like, I'm going to make it. Tears. Because they're like, I thought I was going to have to work forever. I thought I wasn't going to make it. And you're generating the exact same thing. They're like, I thought I was going to be stuck, and I can get out and I can do what I want and I can be happy and enjoy my life and afford it. So that is so awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out today. This has been fantastic. I've just loved talking to you.
Yes, no, this was so fun. I love talking about golden handcuffs.
And how to get off them. Yeah. If you want to get in touch with Jessica, you can do so through her website, which is jessicamedinallc.com. She's also really active on LinkedIn, and we'll put a link to her profile in the show notes. You have a PDF that you want to share with everybody. Tell us a little bit about that.
I do. I have a free guide that you can get on my website. It's the 5 money mistakes lawyers make and what to do instead. I give you my 5 top tips of what I see in my own clients and what I saw in myself in terms of money struggles and things that you can consider doing to make sure that you are making the most out of your money while you have, so you can make the most out of your life. And that's available on my website, jessicamedinallc.com/money. And as soon as you sign up for the guide, you'll also be added to my email list. So you'll get money tips and updates on financial seminars that I give on various topics that are focused on lawyers. But since money issues affect everyone, I have a pretty big audience that enjoys all of those financial seminars.
I love it. Thank you. That is so cool. Thank you as well to our listeners and viewers. I'm your host, Camille Diaz. I'm a business optimization coach, financial educator, author, and speaker. You can contact me and find out what else I'm up to through my website, CamilleDiaz.com. You can also follow me on social media at Cam Unfiltered. Be sure to follow MoneyHeart at MoneyHeart Show, and our website is MoneyHeartShow.com. Jessica, would you like to share today's money mantra?
Oh, yes. So the money mantra I share with all my clients: you can spend your money on anything, but you can't spend it on everything. And if we apply that, well, then we'll have everything eventually.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Camille. This was great.